Michael, in league with David Tilson, were constant visitors to my desk in Parliament. And I think that, the outcome that we have seen still requires a certain amount of continuing vigilance, because without changes in land use regulation in this province, that possibility remains a very, very real possibility. I'd like to also recognize Harold Albrecht, the member for Kitchener-Conestoga, who in a variety of other ways has been a soulmate and a great support on all things parliamentary and many moral in the House of Commons. Thank you for being here today, Harold. And from the other side of the House, my colleague Frank Valeriot, the Member of Parliament for the great city of Guelph. And I think that while many of us, and I think this group is a fairly good example, sit and watch some of the partisan games that happen in the House of Parliament, I think that the three members here today provide living proof that they know full well that they are first and foremost in the House of Commons to serve their constituency and their country. And it was a pleasure to sign the application, and I've got to tell you that Frank has been a persistent advocate for the funding, both with my predecessor Jim Prentice, Minister Prentice, for the cathedral, and it was a real pleasure to put my signature to the approval of the funding for the stained glass work that's going to be done at the cathedral. So it is great to be back in Guelph. I came here often in my previous incarnation as a journalist, speaking to a variety of fora at the university with regards to the media. Little did I realize at the time that I would be on this side of the Great Divide. I'm here today with two objectives in mind. A little give and take, so to speak. I'm here to give you an accounting now of our government's actions in strengthening environmental protection and economic prosperity. And at the same time today, I will be having further meetings to take back to Ottawa some of the region's priorities for government action and investment in the upcoming budget. I've already had the opportunity to meet briefly with a group of local water advocates, passionate local water advocates. It was a very good meeting, I think a fruitful meeting. I've got some follow-up to do there. But I look forward to hearing from others today on the challenges and opportunities facing this storied Canadian community. While preparing for this and future budgets, and before I get to some regional issues, our government's top priority, I must remind you, is to ensure Canada's continued ability to withstand global economic turbulence and to create jobs for Canadians. We realize that Canadian businesses need to respond quickly to changes in order to remain competitive in global markets, and to enable that, the government has to do its part. Which is why Environment Canada is working hard to make our regulations and our processes just as efficient as they are, I believe, effective, all while conserving our commitments to the highest environmental standards. The bottom line is we simply have to be more agile and responsive and provide clear, straightforward rules of engagement that create the confidence and certainty that lead to capital investment and the creation of Canadian jobs. Now, with just over 2 years under my belt as Canada's Environment Minister, I fully realize and appreciate Canada's vast, magnificent, and precious environment. And our government is, I assure you, actively committed to ensuring that Canadians have the freshest water, the cleanest air, and the healthiest environment possible. Canada, as you know, as the second largest country in the world, is home to the third largest supply of annual renewable fresh water in the world, 25% of the world's wetlands, 10% of the world's forests, and over 70,000 plant and animal species. Environnement Canada, notre travail consiste à protéger l'héritage naturel du Canada à long terme. Il reste encore beaucoup à faire, mais grâce à des faits scientifiques avérés, à un solide leadership et à des partenariats productifs, nous obtenons des résultats efficients et efficaces. Sound science, for example, frames our ability to responsibly manage increasingly complex and changing environmental issues, such as climate change, threats to air, water, and biodiversity, and exposure to substances that threaten our environment. The best available research helps us to ensure that our policies are firmly based on or supported by the most reliable evidence. And this is one of the many reasons why our regulations are recognized far beyond our borders as truly world-class. As well, reliable scientific analysis and advice ensures Canadians ever increasingly precise weather forecasts 24/7. Effective partnerships advance the protection of endangered species and our nation's rich biodiversity and increase land conservation as they have in the creation of a record number of new national parks and marine protected areas. And beyond the creation and administration of our formal parks, we work with organizations like the Nature Conservancy of Canada on complementary programs. When the Government of Canada invested $225 million in the Natural Areas Conservation Program, we expected to protect about 200,000 hectares. However, the program has surpassed all expectations, and as of last June, it had protected more than 338,000 hectares, including habitat for 126 species at risk. My department's habitat stewardship for species at risk program in this area has funded projects with the Grand River and the Upper Thames River Conservation Authorities. And this funding also supports the activities to improve and to enhance water quality and aquatic habitat on private lands by offering rural landowners assistance in implementing best management practices. Strong partnerships are also playing a strong role in enabling the protection of our Great Lakes. As a suburban Torontonian from the great riding of Thornhill, the Great Lakes are truly a significant part of my life and the lives of my family, just as I'm sure they are for you and yours. They are the largest system of fresh water on the planet, providing about 18% of the world's fresh surface water. They support more than 3,500 plant and animal species, and they also generate billions of dollars in GDP into the Canadian economy every year. Your government shares a deep commitment to protect these lakes and their communities. The Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, signed by Canada and the United States 4 decades ago, underscores this dedication. And though times have changed, our commitment is constant. Last fall, we worked with the United States to enhance and to contemporize the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. We renewed and we reinforced programs to deal with harmful algae, with toxic chemicals and discharges from vessels using the lakes. And we also included new provisions to address issues such as aquatic invasive species, habitat degradation, and the effects of climate change. Aujourd'hui, cet accord sert de fondement à l'élaboration du nouvel accord Canada-Ontario concernant la qualité de l'eau et la santé de l'écosystème des Grands Lacs. Today, this agreement is serving as the foundation for renewal of the Canada-Ontario Agreement on Great Lakes water quality and ecosystem health. We're already putting the international treaty into action. I recently announced the Government of Canada's almost $50 million contribution towards cleaning up Randall Reef in Hamilton Harbour, which is the largest and most severely contaminated site on the Canadian side of the Great Lakes. With the launch of the Great Lakes Nutrient Initiative, we're investing $60 million over the next 4 years to address the reemergence of toxic and nuisance algae caused by the runoff of chemical nutrients, largely agricultural fertilizers. This initiative will largely focus on Lake Erie, where the impact of algae is the greatest, but it will also establish an updated base of knowledge and strategy that can be used in other lakes as well. Algae growth will be further restricted by our continuing regulation of the use of phosphates in household cleaning products, detergents, and laundry soaps. As will our funding and our collaborative work with 8 Ontario universities and the private sector on management of the Grand River watershed, which flows into Lake Erie, advancing water-related management and better practices in terms of watershed runoff, drinking and wastewater treatment, and contaminant monitoring. Now, I know that many of you understand the value of Lake Simcoe and southeastern Georgian Bay, both of which are important natural resources, vital sources of drinking water, and regional economic drivers, which is why we've just announced significant new funding for Lake Simcoe and southeastern Georgian Bay to help to restore ecological balance and to improve water quality for the residents and the wildlife of the region. It is also part of our government's action plan for clean water, which includes our $18 million 5-year commitment into the second phase of the Lake Winnipeg Basin Initiative. Now, on a national basis, we tackled last year one of the largest single threats to clean water in Canada by introducing the first national standards for wastewater treatment. Compliance with those regulations should be of interest to any number of water quality companies in and around Guelph. These regulations will align us with the United States and the European Union, and of course with Canada's amended Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. Most important, the new regs are aimed at ending the dumping of untreated and undertreated sewage in all of our country's waterways. Now, water quality monitoring is also at the heart of the ongoing work we're doing to ensure the environmental integrity of Canada's oil sands. With the Canada-Alberta Joint Implementation Plan for Oil Sands Monitoring, announced just about a year ago in February last year, we are building the most scientifically credible ongoing profile of the water, air, land, and biodiversity in that region. Stay tuned in the next week or so for an update on implementation to date and on the unfiltered data accumulation and availability of our gradually installed monitoring program. But while water quality is a very high priority to our government, so is water quantity. We're working with a number of partners on both sides of our transboundary waters now to address exceptionally low water levels across the Great Lakes. Water levels in some areas are at 35-year lows. The dominant factors, the scientists tell me, are being attributed to warmer winters and summers and significantly lower precipitation. The most visible effects, as I'm sure many of you in the room know, can be seen in Georgian Bay, but there are economic as well as environmental implications from Lake Superior right to the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. From Montreal to Thunder Bay, commercial vessels are being forced to light load, fish spawning wetland habitat is affected, and residential waterfront property values and municipal tax bases are eroding. An important report is due from the International Joint Commission, the Canada-US body that oversees our shared waters, in the next couple of weeks. But I can tell you there are no easy answers. Which brings me to climate change. Now, as scientists in the room will affirm, it is scientifically incorrect to draw direct cause and effect lines between observed individual changes in weather and climate. But as in other situations across the country and around the world, it is increasingly apparent that the quality and quantity of water in the Great Lakes are increasingly affected by climate change. This reality demands meaningful actions to protect the future of our environment, the future of our people, and the future of our economy. We do that in two ways. It's through the funding of programs to adapt to climate change, whether in addressing increased extreme weather situations, floods and droughts in southern Canada, or the reality of the impact of diminishing Arctic ice and melting permafrost on northern communities and ecosystems. The second challenge of mitigation is being addressed by our sector-by-sector regulatory plan of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We are determined that Canada will meet its Copenhagen commitment of a 17% reduction in emissions from 2005 levels by 2020, and we're now just over halfway to reaching that target. The opposition parties, and this is my only partisan comment of the day, but the opposition parties, in contrast, have made it clear they would impose economy-distorting and job-killing carbon taxes that would not guarantee absolute emission reductions. The money would go into general revenues, just as taxes do, and in the end would raise